Chapter 9. Strawberry Picking. "Well, Astrid, what do you think?" Jeanette asked, as the three of them watched Buck's boat retreating across the lake. "He's the one," Astrid said, her eyes glittering. The boat's wake rushed onto the shore, as if applauding. "He's the one what?" Francie asked. "He's the one who's been knocking off cabin owners around here. I suspect we're next," she said, matter-of-factly. "Unless, of course, we do something about it first." She turned to Francie and smiled sweetly. "Let's go strawberry picking." Francie did not see how picking strawberries was going to stop Buck from doing anything, and she said so. Astrid laughed her tiny tinkling bell giggle that always made Francie smile and said, "Ha, of course not, but I definitely want to get enough strawberries for a pie." "A pie?" Jeanette protested. "We'll never get that many strawberries." Francie didn't think so either. The wild strawberries were so very, very tiny that you needed hundreds and hundreds of them to make a pie. But they were so very, very sweet and delicious. Francie's mouth started to water just thinking about them. So she said, "Let's see if we can." Their secret strawberry spot was on a sunny knoll overlooking the forest behind the cabin. From here, it seemed as if the forest stretched forever, north and north into the great boreal forests of Canada. On days like this, when the wind blew from there, the smell of endless pines and lakes and granite filled the air. She felt herself snuffling the scent like a dog does, filling her lungs with it. It was a smell that called up some primal part of her, her wild, natural self. Her real self, she thought suddenly. "Have you heard from your brother?" Jeanette was asking her. "No," Francie said, "not since... I can't remember really. It was Christmas." "Oh, Christmas," Astrid said. "A few years ago," Francie finished. The sight of a cluster of red berries under the leaves suddenly made her feel close to tears. "What happened between you two? You used to be so close," Astrid said. "Close?" Francie exclaimed. "We fought like cats and dogs." "That's what siblings who are close do," Astrid said. "Siblings who are not close don't have any reason to fight. What keeps the two of you apart?" Francie dropped the few strawberries she'd found into her pail. They hit the bottom with the faintest plink. "I guess I don't really know," she said finally. Somehow it's just become habit. It's just the way it is. We don't communicate. We're just so different," Francie said. "We don't have much in common." Astrid snorted. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," she said. "You are like two peas in a pod." "Ooh," Jeanette squeaked. "Look at this spot." She plunked herself down on the ground and went after the strawberries with a vengeance. "How are we alike?" Francie protested. "He's mostly a penniless, mountain-climbing adventurer, and I'm a struggling actor who never leaves New York City." "Yes, you do leave," Astrid said. "You're here. And anyway, I'm not talking about what you do. I'm talking about who you are." Francie grew very still, acutely feeling the breeze on her face. My real self, she thought again. What did that really mean, she wondered. "You and your brother share a common fierce fearlessness, a kind of recklessness in the face of danger," Astrid went on. "You're both impulsive, high-minded, and non-materialistic. You are motivated by compassion." "That's all true about him, maybe, but not me." "Ha," Astrid said. "How can you say I'm fearless? When have I had to face danger? How can you say I'm motivated by compassion? I can't think of one compassionate thing I've done, unless you count donating a quarter for a newspaper from homeless people." "Well, we know what we know," Jeanette sniffed. "Astrid, have you gotten any more berries?" "Oh," Astrid said, "I've long ago given up looking for berries. Now I'm hunting for diamonds." That night, Francie happily and tiredly climbed into bed in the boathouse. The previous night, with the wind chime and the strange noise and the footsteps, all seemed as if it happened long ago, or not at all. Her aunts assured her that nothing could possibly happen to them until Francie actually sold the cabin to Buck, because that wouldn't make any sense at all. Francie wasn't so sure about that, but she was happy to curl up alone with her thoughts and feelings. And so many feelings. Her anger and frustration had dissipated, and instead she was filled with gratitude. She was happy that she had this time with her beloved aunts. Her grandfather would say they had tricked her into coming. He would be at least disapproving and more likely furious. But what if they hadn't tricked her? Would she have come if they had just invited her? She was ashamed to admit that she probably wouldn't have. She was too busy with schoolwork and too broke, and there was always that next audition. How long might it have been before she'd come back here? It might have taken their actual deaths. She thought about the feeling of the warm sun on her back when they'd been berry picking that afternoon, the lazy drone of a fly, the chickadees chickadee-deeing in the trees, chatting amiably with her aunts who seemed to know things about her that she didn't know. That feeling that she'd almost grasped who she really was. Was she fearless? Was she motivated by compassion? There was nothing to indicate that. It would be like her aunts to suggest that she was in case it might take. She was grateful for them. She didn't have a mother and a father to say kind things to her, and her grandfather didn't say kind things. Granddad, she thought. Had he found out where she'd gone? What was going on back in that world, that other world that seemed so distant now? Well, she wouldn't worry about it. Tonight she felt loved, and those feelings made a big warm circle around her. Still, it seemed that within the warm circle was a dark hole, endlessly deep. It was into this hole that she felt herself falling. Of course, that was mostly the reason she'd never come back. She was afraid to feel the pain of losing her father as keenly as she did here, at the lake, where everything reminded her of him. That warm sun on her back today made her ache a little bit inside. The lazy drone of the fly made her feel more acutely the drone of old pain. Those tender little birds, the chickadees, they were the fearless ones. So tiny, yet she'd seen them chasing blue jays, several times bigger than they were, away from their nests. Her father had tamed those little birds, putting birdseed on his hat and standing so still that they came and sat on his head and eventually his shoulders and even his hands. She carried an image in her mind of him this way, covered in chickadees. And now, seeing or hearing these birds caused her both little pricks of pain and somehow mixed in a kind of deep delight, a delight she was almost afraid to acknowledge. She reached for the book on the bedside table and read from a poem by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things. She set the book down and listened, without thinking of anything else, to the raucous calls of loons on the lake. They cooed and hollered, yodeled, and laughed crazily, sang with wild abandon. She could picture them, practically standing on the water with their big wings outstretched and flapping, a big Friday night dance. More coming in for landings, with long, slow approaches, and the graceless splash as they touched down, the other loons gathering around to join the party. Party. That party at the Fredricksons. Should she go? She pictured the party-goers gathering, preening and squawking and laughing like loons, and Mrs. Fredrickson would be in the midst of it all, making entrances like, oh, for the love of Mike, Frederica Ricard, star of screen and stage, as seen in film, television, on Broadway. Savory Fredrickson was Frederica Ricard, Broadway star, former Broadway star. And she, Francesca Fry, was invited to her house for a party the very next night. Things might be working out very well after all, very well indeed. Francie blew out the lamp and laid her head on the deliciously soft pillow, closed her eyes, and fell asleep, smiling.